Hello friends, let's talk about the DILR section of CAT 18, slot 1. DILR section has always been slightly enigmatic because we don't know what to expect. This section has been difficult for last 2-3 years for sure. And the fact is that no matter how much you practice, you cannot be very sure about what you're going to see in the exam. What I'm trying to say is the way to study DILR section cannot be organized in a way that quant or VA can be organized, and that is why this is enigmatic. But can we talk about some trends about this section? In the last 3 CATs, 15, 16 and 17, the 90 percentile cutoff of this section was less than 30 marks. Please remember there are 32 questions, so maximum marks are 96, and 30 marks would have given you a 90 percentile in this section and you would have cleared the cutoff. That means it was sufficient in those 3 exams to solve 3 caselets correctly out of 8 in this section. So if you had thought that CAT 18 would be of similar level of difficulty, your initial objective you could have set as attempting 3 to 4 caselets out of 8. Please understand, if you are going to attempt 4 caselets in 1 hour, that means each caselet can have as much as 15 minutes. That's a lot of time, friends, to read, to understand, and to attempt 4 questions. So the most important skill in doing well in this section is to be able to take a call and identify the easy, moderate, and the hard caselets. Obviously, you would want to do the easy ones and leave the hard ones alone, and maybe come back to the moderate ones when all the easy ones are taken care of. So can we make some analysis about how to identify the caselets as easy or moderate or hard? First of all, you must ask yourself, is the topic of the caselet unfamiliar? Something that you have never seen before or not studied. You can also see for yourself, is there a lot of information to be understood? Too many graphs, too many tables. Obviously, that makes the caselet hard. Are there too many people in a seating arrangement? Are there too many conditions to be taken care of? So that's the information we are talking about. Then you must look at the questions quickly. There are 4 questions. Are there many questions of theta type? Are there questions which have options such as none of these or cannot be determined? Obviously, these questions require more work. Do the questions have question-specific data? Because not only do you have to understand the main data, but also you must understand the question-specific data and erase it out of your mind once that question is done. So it's hard. Do the questions involve minimization and maximization? Because minimization and maximization means that there is some uncertainty. You have to play around with the data and come up with some answers. And finally, in my opinion, the most difficult type of question is a question where the options are in terms of true or false statements. Because every statement has to be judged, and you must keep in mind whether they're asking which one is true or which ones are true, etc., etc. And therefore, this type of question is very difficult and challenging. Now, if you look at all these questions together, if many of these questions have affirmative answer or yes, then that data set or the caselet is definitely hard. If the answers, many of the answers are no, then that caselet would be easy and you would want to do it immediately, not postpone it for later. And that is how you make a start. We are going to see CAT 18, slot 1, each of these caselets in this slide and maybe solve 1 or 2. All right, folks. Some of you may have encountered this caselet as number 1 caselet in the DILR section of CAT 18, slot 1. So there is a story and there is a table. The table doesn't look too complicated. There are obviously 6 conditions there that you can see very clearly. But if you read or if you look at the story, there are at least 3 conditions which are embedded in that. The marks in DI are doubled. Then the sum of the marks must be, the 4 highest are recruited, and candidates who score less than 70% in 2 or more sections are disqualified. So there are 3 more conditions embedded in the story and 6 conditions here. Let us take a look at the questions that were asked in this caselet. First question, based on statements, and not only based on statements, but also we are talking about combinations of statements, and so must be true and statements and combination, very hard question indeed. Second question is also based on statement, must be false, so you must keep that in mind. Third question, no options, so theta, no options, plus maximum marks, so maximization, minimization. Question 4, again theta, and again maximization, minimization. So taking a look at this caselet and taking a look at these 4 questions, what you will notice is that the topic is familiar, a small table. Data doesn't seem to be too involved, it's a very small table, but there are many conditions. And the questions, 2 questions are theta, 2 questions have question-specific data, 2 questions are on maximization, minimization, and 2 questions have statements as options, one of them true, one of them asking you which one are false. So definitely, taking all this into account, I would say this first caselet that we have seen, the difficulty level, I would rate it as high. And I would not go ahead and solve this data set immediately. A national institute who prepares students for CAT rated this set as easy to medium. I'm at a loss as to how this set could be rated as easy to medium. All right, folks, another caselet. 4 female students, 4 male students, studying in some college or institute, majoring in some subject, minoring in another subject, 7 conditions. What kind of questions are asked? First question, direct MCQ. Second question, again direct MCQ. However, you would notice that there is a cannot be determined as one of the options. Third question, again cannot be determined as one of the options, but still MCQ. And question 4, again MCQ, but still cannot be determined as one of the options. So what is the mental check here in terms of level of difficulty? Topic is familiar, data not too involved, is basically chart making with students, college and major, subject and minor. 3 questions have cannot be determined as an option, so they are slightly difficult in that sense, and 1 question has question specific data. So how would you rate it? I would rate it as easy to moderate. One institute actually rated this set as difficult. It beats me. I would have gone ahead and solved this because I'm not too sure that you would find sets which are significantly easier than this. So I would take a look at it and crack it. All right, another caselet here on 20 petrol pumps. Contaminations, high, medium or low, and there are 5 conditions. What about the questions? First question, based on statements, what must be true? Second question, doesn't look like based on statements, but when you see things like more than 4, at least 8, it's basically maximization and minimization. Question 3, based on statements, what must be true? Question 4, also based on statements. On top of that, question 3 and question 4 begin with if, so there's question specific data. So what do these questions and what does the main information tell you? The topic is familiar, small chart, 20 pumps, but there are 20 pumps, so it's a long chart, and so data is slightly involved. One question on maximization and minimization, 2 questions have question-specific data, and 3 questions have statements as options. In my opinion, if you take all this into account, the difficulty level of this caselet is definitely on the high side. I would not do it right away. If you had taken Cat 18 in slot 1, you would have seen this caselet, an interesting looking pie chart. There are 3 concentric circles, and just a brief look would have told you that the outermost are months, the inner circle is the quarters, each year being divided into 4 quarters, and then the innermost circle is talking about the years 2016 and 2017. And then they're talking about monthly sales, quarterly sales, and some figures are missing. And let us take a look at the questions then. The questions were direct, all of them multiple choice, nothing at all, nothing special about these questions. And so, what's the difficulty level? Topic is familiar, data appears busy but not complicated, and no red flags at all. Taking all this into account, difficulty level is certainly easy. I would go ahead and do it. In fact, in my opinion, for slot 1, this was the easiest set, easiest to crack. All answers are correct. A caselet on 3 committees, 24 people being some politicians, some educationalists, bureaucrats, etc. Only 3 conditions. Let us take a look at the questions. First question is based on statements. Which one must be false? Second, no options at all. Theta. Second question is theta. Third question, again no options. So again theta. And fourth question based on statements. So another mental check about the questions. Topic is familiar. Very few conditions indeed. 2 questions are theta. 2 questions have statements as options, making them slightly difficult. How would I rate the difficulty level? I would rate it moderate, tending towards easy. I would go ahead and do it. And if you have kept track of what we've been talking about, this would be my 3rd set or caselet. First one was about the students, colleges, minor subject and major subject. Second one was the pie chart, and this would have been my 3rd set. You can bet on CAT giving you interesting questions in DILR, and this was one of the more interesting questions. It was new, and therefore many students probably did not attempt it. So the story is very short, just 6 lines, and just one condition, and that is that about the denomination and the customer preference. So dispenses notes such that the number of notes of customers' preferred denomination exceeds the total number of notes. Please understand, the total number of notes of other denominations. Doesn't matter right now. What about questions? First question, theta. No options. Second question, question specific data, maximum, maximization, minimization. Third question, again, question specific data, maximum number, maximization, minimization. Fourth question, again, question specific information and smallest possible, so minimization. So, out of these 4 questions, the topic, first of all, the topic is little unfamiliar. Story is short and only one condition is there. 3 questions are on maximization and minimization. 3 questions have question specific data and 2 questions are theta. How would I rate it? Taking all this into account, in my opinion, the difficulty level would be moderate to high. Moderate only because the story is short and only one condition is there. High because the topic is little unfamiliar and there are many other twists and turns. A totally different kind of caselet from slot 1. A square matrix n by n, and you are supposed to fill the cells with numerals given the condition that adjacent cells, two cells are called adjacent. There's a definition of adjacent and there is something about the numerals that can go into adjacent cells. So one condition. What about the questions? First question, numeric or theta. Second question, the different square matrix, but again theta. Question number 3, minimum number, maximization, minimization. Question number 4, same, minimum number, minimization. So what can we say about this caselet? The topic is totally unfamiliar. Condition is tricky because you have to work with adjacent cells and the definition of adjacent cells. And then all the 4 questions are about minimizing. One question has question specific data. The conditions have actually changed in that, and 2 questions are theta. So how would you rate this caselet? I would rate it as moderate to high. Moderate only because once you get into it, the caselet is actually not that difficult. Let us briefly review our discussion so far on Cat 18 Slot 1 DILR section. What we were saying in the beginning was that based on Cat 15, 16 and 17, when the 90 percentile cutoff for this section was less than 30 marks, it would be sufficient to solve 3 caselets out of 8. And if that was our initial objective for this slot of Cat 18, the 3 caselets that I would recommend or you should have done were one about the pie chart, the other about the students, the colleges, major and minor as subjects, and one about committees. Now what next? How would you choose your 4th set? Either you could have done any one of the 4 that we have discussed so far, or you could have done the most familiar topic to the students and the most popular topic with the examiners, the Venn diagram. So there was a Venn diagram in as a caselet in slot 1 about satellites, and this was the main data. There were 4 conditions and 3 types of purposes for the satellites: broadcasting, communication, surveillance. Others were not going to have any other function, so they could have been treated as a separate set. There were 4 questions. First one, definitely about minimizing and maximizing. Second one also is about minimizing. It clearly says minimum possible number. Third question is at least, exactly, at most, again minimization, maximization. On top of that it says no conclusion is possible, so cannot be determined is one of the options. And the last one is based on statements. So the discussion we have been having on each of the caselets and the question types would lead to something like this for this Venn diagram question of slot 1. Topic is very familiar, data not too involved. There's one question cannot be determined. There are 3 questions on maximizing and minimizing. 2 questions have question specific data and 1 question has statements as options. So how would you rate it? I would rate it definitely as a high level of difficulty. But we are going to go ahead and do this question in detail because it's such a popular topic with the students and the examiners. The solution of any Venn diagram question will begin by drawing the Venn diagram. This is a 3-set Venn diagram. B, C and S would be the 3 sets, and the area which is lying outside those 3 sets would be called others or O. So 3 circles are drawn, B, C and S. The universal set has 1600 elements because there are 1600 satellites. And the region outside B, C and S here would be called others or O. So this is the basic diagram. Now let us fill in the other information. They have said that the number of satellites serving B, C and S and need not be exclusively are in the ratio 2:1:1. So we can say if B has 2x in the circle, C would have x, and so would S. The second statement says number of satellites serving all three is 100. All three means this region, so that must be 100. The third says number of satellites exclusively serving C. So this number is equal to those exclusively serving S, equal to this number, and this number is 30% of the satellites exclusively serving B, which is this number. How can we make it easy for ourselves? Stay away from fractions. So if I say this region is 10y, then these two will be 3y each. What else? The number of satellites serving O, which is this other, is the same as the number of satellites serving both C and S but not B. So they're talking about this region and this region, that the number of elements are same in these two regions. Let's call them Z. What else? Do you realize that if these two circles, the circle for surveillance and circle for communication, have to have the same number, x, then these two regions, which I'm pointing out here, must also have the same number of elements because all the other regions are same. And therefore we call it A. That would complete our Venn diagram. All the information has been entered and now we have to analyze it. Let us look at question number 1, or maybe before going to question number 1, let us see what's happening with this Venn diagram. If I look at the circle related to broadcasting, the total number of elements is 2x and it consists of 4 regions, 10y, A, and 100. So that's the equation number 1. 2x equal to 10y plus 2a plus 100. What about the circle C or circle S? Is the same thing. That will give us another equation. X is equal to 3y plus a plus z plus 100. What about the universal set? That will give us equation number 3. 1600 must be equal to all these y's, 16 y's, 2 a's, 2 z's, and the central region of 100. 3 equations, 4 variables. Obviously we cannot determine each one of them exactly. So we'll try to make it slightly simpler for ourselves. You can see that x can be eliminated between these two equations. I multiply equation 2 by 2, equation 2 by 2, and equate it to equation 1. This is what I'll get. Rearranging, I know 2a and 2a will cancel. Y's can be organized on one side. It will become 4y equal to 2z plus 100 or 2y equal to z plus 50, which we will call as equation 4. So we still have 3 variables, y, z, and a, and we have only 2 equations. Equation 4y equal to 2z plus 100 and equation 4. Let's go to question 1. What can be said about the number of satellites serving C? These were the 2 equations that we have, y, a, and z related, and this was our Venn diagram. Now, 3 variables, y, a, and z. So if I take y to be 0, then everything basically collapses, and so that's not very fruitful. So let us assume that a is 0. If a is 0, what happens? If a is 0, equation number 3 becomes this, which is just dividing by 2, it becomes this. But we know z is nothing but 2y minus 50. I substitute that and I get 800 equal to 10y, y equal to 80. Once y is 80, I know z is 110. I can substitute these values here. If y is 80, 3y is 240, z is 110. And the value for this x, or the number of satellites which are serving communication, would come out as 450. Keep that in mind because one of the options has this number 450. But we don't know whether that is the maximum or the minimum. So let us do another simple calculation, keeping in mind that we had already achieved a value for x here as 450. Now what can we do? We had already taken a to be 0. Now let us take z to be 0. If z is 0, obviously y is 25, and so 3y will become 75. And if I substitute that value here, in equation 3, y equal to 25, z equal to 0, and simplify, I get a as 550. So what is the value of x? 550 plus 100 plus 75. Now this communication, number of satellites serving communication can be as much as 725. We already had 450 from the previous analysis when a was 0. We have x equal to 75 and z is 0, and therefore it has to be option 2. Question number 2 of the Venn diagram. What is the minimum possible number of satellites serving B exclusively? This was our Venn diagram. Serving B exclusively, we are talking about this region. Minimum number, what is the minimum value of y? And when we had done our analysis for question number 1, y had varied between a low of 25 to a high of 80. So if I take the minimum value of y as 25, the answer to this is very, very simple, which is 250. Question number 3 of the Venn diagram question, slot 1. At least 100 were serving O, others. What would be the number, what can we say about the number of satellites serving surveillance? So this was our Venn diagram, and now they are saying that the value of z here is at least 100. So that's how we have written it here. But let us take z to be 100 for simplification. Then what happens? If z is 100, from this equation I know y is 75. If y is 75, z is 100. I can use equation 3 to come up with a value of a. A will come out to be 50. Now, if a is 50, y is 75, how difficult is it to find out 3y plus a plus 100 plus 100? And that will give me the number of satellites in the circle S is 475. Now 475 appears in all these 3 options, and one of them is cannot be determined. Do you remember that when we were working out the answer to question number 1, the number of satellites serving communication had come out to be 450, and in that case Z was 110. So the number of satellites can definitely be lower than 475, and therefore the answer would be option 4, at most 475. This is one of the tricks in DILR. The answers to the previous questions can be very, very useful, and keep that in mind when you do the 4 questions of any caselet. Alright friends, the last question on the Venn diagram. The options are in terms of statements, and they're asking which of these statements must be false. So these are the 4 statements. Remember, this was our Venn diagram. We already have, to our benefit, the answers to the first 3 questions. All 1600 satellites serve B, C or S. Can this statement be true? For this statement to be true, Z will have to be 0. We already know when Z can be 0, so this cannot be the answer. The number of satellites serving B is more than 1000. Can it be false? We already know the value of A could be as much as 550, and therefore this statement can be true, so cannot be false. The number of satellites serving B exclusively is exactly 250. That means Y, the value of Y must be exactly 25. We know Y varies between 25 and 80. This option is gone. 4th, without even reading, must be the correct option. So this is how this Venn diagram was, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you very much.